Turn on the recorder. All right. Let's pray. Let's just ask the Lord to watch over us and our time and our technology. And Lord God, Father, we just praise you and we thank you that you're our King and our God and our Savior and all that you mean to us. Father, please do watch over all the technology that we have to depend on. And I just pray that you give my brother Willie peace right now, Lord. We're here just to hear from you, Lord, and we just want to depend on your Holy Spirit. And we just want to learn whatever it is you want us to be learning, Lord, from each other as we are here together. Thank you, Father. And we just pray these things in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, let me just kind of go over the agenda for today. We'll spend a little time hearing from Willie, just kind of a presentation to kind of bring some things together for us to remind us of some of the pieces of the project that he's done. Then we'll spend a little time in some discussion with each other as you're listening to the presentation, as you're thinking back on the dissertation, just kind of be thinking of topics that you think would be of interest for us to discuss for a time. After we've gotten through that time, then three of us that are kind of on your voting committee, Dr. Weathers, Dr. Rowland, and myself, we've got to gather together for about 10 minutes and fill out an evaluation form. So I'll need to take everybody out of the session except the three of us for that time. And then in about 10 minutes from that, then I bring you back into the session and give you the results. So that's kind of the way it goes. And Willie, you've done some good work, so I know you're going to do fine. We always have a few little suggestions that we try to give students at the end of an oral review. But I can say don't be nervous, but I know that's pretty impossible just not to be nervous when you're in a situation like this. But we're all with you, and we're just kind of here to, like I said, to hear from the Lord and hear what the Lord is doing in our midst. So I just pray that you'll have His peace and that you can.
Yes, sir.
Just have that kind of confidence that the Lord gives you right now.
Yes, sir.
So let's do it. Let's see, Willie, I need you to share your screen. Should be a little icon down there on the bottom of the screen. It says share. And then if you have a PowerPoint, you'd be able to do that. Share that with us.
Is it being shared?
Yeah, let's see. Your meeting should start in seconds. There you go. Yeah, we're there.
So should I begin?
Yes, you can go ahead and lead us through it.
So the journey that I wanted to speak about as it relates to the Veterans Program for the state of Illinois and its interpretation of my involvement was learning how to become my brother's keeper. As we are aware in the book of Genesis, it speaks about Cain and Abel, where Cain, he killed his brother Abel because basically he was jealous of how his sacrifice was received. And when Cain, I'm summarizing, paraphrasing in my own language, of course, when Cain was asked by God, where is his brother? He said something to the effect of, am I my brother's keeper? Well, in the military, we relied on each other very extensively. We trained in a manner in which our lives oftentimes depended on it, and that's the way we looked at our brotherhood and our sisterhood. After the military, we share similar bonds. And when brothers and sisters or disabled veterans in this sense are coming to me for support, I am their keeper, essentially, from a workforce development perspective. So that's where the comment comes from. The State of Illinois Veterans Program. There's a veterans program in all 50 states. The Department of Labor funds each one. And in short, our job is to empower disabled, that's disability from the standpoint of a service-connected disability, which can be different than a Social Security-related disability, low-income persons, and persons who may have a criminal background. The theory that the Department of Labor had is that while there are 6 primary areas that are what they call significant barriers to employment, they wanted us to place more emphasis on the economically or academically deprived veterans, and to empower them with work readiness skills. Upon arrival to the job center or to the state of Illinois program, I saw an opportunity to be able to help veterans return back to work in a more effective way. Traditional methods gave some bonus points, like if a veteran applies for a federal or state application and they are disabled, they receive extra points in terms of the application process, or they're given what we call priority of service, where they basically are given a level of extra service as opposed to the average constituent. And talking to my brothers and sisters in arms, they didn't like that. And, you know, they felt like they were getting a handout, and what they really wanted was a hand up. And so it started the pattern of me thinking about ways in which I could actually do that. Then I stumbled across the continuous quality improvement process, which is a form of lean management that allow constant evolution in regards to work processes in this instance. And the state of Illinois actually had an existing system that they were already using called Rapid Results. And so I saw an opportunity to just merge the two. In terms of your questions, Dr. Payne, I wanted to go by each one individually, and the project or the PowerPoint presentation is designed to answer each one individually. So the specific problem that was addressed in the project is, in short, it's just a lack of formal training. Every veteran employment representative, which is the official title for both a DBOP and a LEVR, has to go to the National Veterans Training Institute for formal training from a federal perspective. The acronym for that school is called MBTI, and it's actually based out of Dallas, Texas right now. And in short, it's 3 to 4 days of training that focuses on the core job descriptions. The opportunity that arrived, or the opportunity that we arrived at, is that all subsequent trainings after that formal training are done on an intermittent and often virtual basis in the state of Illinois. A prime example would be every Monday, we have a conference call, and people go around the room and just share what their week is going to be like. It's from the standpoint of effectiveness, I don't see how it accomplishes a whole lot, because there's not a follow-up email or anything in regards to what the topics of the conversation are, or even an agenda majority of the time. So it's pretty unstructured, and that unstructured leads to gaps in our service levels. If there are times when a formal training or informal training is done on these conference calls, there's no follow-up documentation. So if we miss something during the conference call, there's no way to be able to reference that piece. And so it challenges us to be able to reach out and gather information as needed when we're serving individuals in real time. So it becomes very frustrating, and it's caused some turnover. The context of the problem in terms of the background and current situation is the lack of training structure and the varying strength of leadership to report to. So we have our business service managers, and then we have the veteran program managers. You'll see later that there are 6 business service managers and 2 veteran program managers. So essentially we have 8 bosses, and we oftentimes got directives from multiples of them, and trying to decide who to follow, when to follow them, and especially if there's conflicting information, it became a real challenge. And the manner in which the questions were asked and or answered by management as well as line staff was not professional, and it oftentimes led to hostile work environments. The hostility became so alarming that it created discord in the workplace. I mean, you had on one end passionate, untrained professionals that want to do well, that want to empower the veteran job seekers that are coming before them, but they just didn't have the tools to do that. So they began to form cliques, and it became an environment of us, the veteran representatives, against management type of mentality. And that led to poor and inconsistent service to the veterans, which is the reason why we were there. And we lost credibility in the workforce development industry. The multiple streams of leadership increased the number of reporting structures that we had to do. So in addition to our daily reporting measures we had to take when we met with individuals, we had different weekly and or daily reporting structures that we had to report out to the various managers. So it added to the time of our daily workloads, which is very frustrating. And when we got conflicting information, we just basically had to go by whatever the last directive was. And it was just very unprofessional as well. That led to confusions about the priorities for the program, and we just essentially didn't look like we knew what we were doing. And that's oftentimes what it felt like. Again, that led to poor and inconsistent service to the veteran job seekers. And more importantly, or equally of importance, we lost credibility with subject matter experts. The specific way that I sought to try to turn the project around to the cultural context was to listen and document the concerns of the DVOP counselors and of the veteran employment representatives, and present that information to leadership from the perspective of humility. Oftentimes, or in my experience, managers don't want to be told what to do. So I appreciated that value, and I only offered information to them from the perspective of, here is the general consistency of what I'm hearing, because I was doing an unofficial survey of the counselors, just kind of gathering what's working, what's not. And I presented it to them from the perspective of how did they want to use it? Did they want to use it? And in doing so, it made it feel or appear as if the ideas were their own and not those of the veteran employment representatives. And it showed signs of working initially. The theory that I operated under was that once people know what's available, they can make better decisions. The things that I was doing in the northern portion of the state, the people down in the southern portion of the state or any other corner or area of the state, they were not aware of it unless we discussed it on those conference calls. So the challenge with that is that veterans or job-seeking veterans are oftentimes transient. They go wherever the need is, or in terms of where they think the service may be, or the better service may be. So by us not sharing our best practices, we were missing out on an opportunity to possibly end homelessness, indigence, and or unemployability. But if we knew what other veteran employment representatives were doing throughout the state, we can make better choices. That was the theory. In terms of the theoretical framework, the essential components were the three questions that guided my entire research. Bless you. And that was the DVOP counselors, what did they want to be able to have in order to consider themselves effective? I wanted to listen to them. I wanted to be able to capture what they felt they needed and be able to devise tools to give to them. The second primary area that guided me was the actual veteran job seeker. I wanted to pose suggestions to where we operated differently from what was traditionally done. And what was traditionally done was to identify a need of employment in the region that we were in and train up individuals to that need, whether it was something they were good at or not, or something they were interested in or not, because it allowed easy placements. The challenge with that is that it didn't meet the veterans' desires and or strengths oftentimes. And when that happened, we had a lot of turnover. So the approach, I wanted to switch it and take a more holistic approach and identify the veteran's need, working from a bottom-up perspective first, and then train them up from a work readiness perspective based on what their desires were. And how to manage all of that information in our system, our various systems, was done by a process called knowledge management. And it kept it very systematic. It gave access to information in a timely manner. It allowed for semantics that was common to all of our veteran employment representatives. And these are the three essential components that guided the entire project. Any questions so far? Some of the most important literature sources that I found to be helpful was the Bible itself, where it talks about in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That was a prime example of why work is important. God did it. And in the very beginning of the Bible, it demonstrates that in Genesis 1:1. And the other thing that I thought was really important in terms of important literature sources, bless you, was the verse where it talks about whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. So veterans are taught to be very atypical in their personality, very strong personalities, and that's what helped us to survive the various things that we may encounter while in the military. If a veteran thought that he or she was being forced to do something for whatever reason, like most people, they don't want to do it. I don't think we're any different. We're any different from that perspective. But if they were working as if they were working for the Lord, especially those that were faith-based, then they would work harder at it. The other literature that I found very helpful was the information and communication technology studies, which essentially is where 24/7 access is given. It's a form of e-government where 24/7 access to empowering tools is offered to the community. The state of Illinois has two websites in particular that cover everything from a work readiness perspective, from job search strategies to resume writing to mock interviews or interviewing skills to actual job postings, going to school, funding for school. I mean, it's a very comprehensive websites that most people don't even know about. And it offers 24/7 access. So what I did, in addition to marketing these websites for the project, I also used it as a model to build the actual best practices manual. The main theological principles as it relates to the project was when God shared that after 6 days of straight work of working, he deemed it all good. So work in and of itself is a good thing. If God deems it good, it's a good thing. And then I wanted to capture where things went south, where Genesis 3:17 speaks to the fall of man, and how because Adam disobeyed God's command, that some work can really be difficult. And that's how work is not always pleasing, but it is a necessary thing that we all must go through. And so that's how that entered into our lives. The final theological principle that guided my thinking was that as a Christian man, I am charged to empower all of those that I come across from a work readiness perspective, because that's my gift. They're my brothers and sisters, whether they claim it or not, and I have a right to give them what I have. I have the not the right, but I have the privilege, I should say, to give them what I have. In describing the qualitative or quantitative methods that I use, because of the information I shared earlier about the work culture, qualitative methods were the best and most optimal option. In researching how would I use such subjective information to guide a research or a dissertation at a graduate level, Johnny Saldana summed it up best in his article, Research and Analyze Thyself, where he said, before you can, make comments about others, you have to really do a self-analyzation of yourself and hold yourself to a higher moral code. So in the paper, I broke down what those things were. And that was very I was very prudent about using those tools to measure what I was doing on a daily basis and how I was capturing and documenting information and ultimately prepared it to be presented to leadership. In terms of the summary of the results, originally when things first started, I had several managers and veteran employment representatives that wanted to be a part of the project. As the project got started and I started sharing different chapters as they were completed, things changed, and leadership immediately pulled their support. And in doing so, I noticed that a lot of my colleagues were afraid to continue engaging me with conversations surrounding this project. So I had to resort down to 3 primary counselors and 2 community partners that through the help of Baki leadership, I created some anonymity, I can pronounce that word, but I made it to where their identities were unknown as best I could. And I met in private with them outside of work hours, and that's how I was able to gather their concerns and or the things that they wanted to share. And what was interesting is that from a DBOC perspective, is that they were all really frustrated about the lack of direction. They felt like they were being paid to be a subject matter expert, and they didn't have the tools to be a subject matter expert. So it's really frustrating. And the most dominant theory from the community partners was that they wanted to partner with the Veterans Program, but they didn't have a lot of confidence in the management. So that was pretty interesting to me. In terms of the transformation strategy, from an internal leadership perspective, I had to look like, act like, sound like, be like the actual veteran employment representatives. And I was able to do that because I walked in their shoes. I not only was operating from a professional perspective, but I remember a time, actually, how I got into workforce development is because when I arrived to Washington State, I went into a job center seeking help, and I was treated really poorly. And as fate would have it, within 5 to 7 years, I forget the exact timeline, God saw to it that I was working out of that same office. And so I've been doing it now for 8+ years, and I've been trying to enact change from within. And I like to believe that hopefully that's having some positive effect. The other guiding principle as it relates to the transformational strategies I use was reflective leadership. I would be remiss if I didn't take into consideration and have empathy for the managers in trying to manage a program with some of these challenges or opportunities that I'm speaking about. So as I put together the best practice manual, I definitely had that in mind. And in working in a environment such as this, especially after word got out about the work that I was doing, I started to become the target of some people's frustrations. I was literally cursed out in the workplace. I was yelled at on multiple occasions by my peers and management. It almost became a norm until I expressed some concerns to some higher ups and outside of our actual agency, and then things started to change. So I needed some daily motivations to keep myself motivated, and in order to make sure that I don't get vengeful and try to do things for the wrong reasons. So Les Brown was giving a speech one day, and he talked about the importance of give, get, giving twice as much as you get. So, you know, as I reflect on that, I think about in the Bible what Jesus talks about turning the other cheek. And I think that's the best summary that I could tie it to from a biblical perspective, because I learned to, when others hit me, I didn't hit back. Not immediately, anyway. And I learned to fight in different ways. And Simon Sinek summed that up best for me when he says, don't give to get, give to inspire others to give. I knew that people were watching me, and they knew that how I professed my love of Christ. So how I responded to things could have an impact on whether or not they choose Christ. So I was very aware of that as well. Summarizing how I've grown, the project revealed to me that my transformational leadership style is one of constant growth. constant evolution. I'll never be perfect, but I've learned to walk in my imperfection. And what I mean by that is I'm okay with not succeeding at everything I do. Transformational leadership allows me to admit that and then seek out ways to improve upon that and share that with others so there's some accountability. I understand and equate transformational leadership with the ability to embrace change or teach others how to embrace change. And so I have to live that in order to be able to sell that. And so by having that level of acceptance, I believe in the change, and in doing so, I can actually teach that to others. The next steps, I'm torn. I'm torn about the next steps, and I've been praying and asking God ever since the beginning of this project, where will it go? There was a gentleman that works for the Governmental Accountability Office, which is kind of the watchdog of all federal programs. And he wrote about essentially the same thing as I'm speaking about in this project, and the importance of the DBOP counselor and how they're tied to all 6 programs, all 6 federal programs. And so my immediate thought was to send the completed version of this dissertation and the best practices manual to him, and then allow him to see if it's worthy of impact and change from a top-down perspective. But my motives aren't pure on that yet. And so I'm gonna wait at this point and just continue to follow the money. And in doing so, I realized that for the last 4 years, because the grants are given in, the Jobs for Veterans State Grant is given in 4-year increments, there was a total of $7,152,000 given to the state of Illinois. Now that's just the state of Illinois alone for over a 4-year period. I couldn't get the information for the next 4 years as hard as I tried, but again, I wasn't being received by leadership once they found out I was writing this paper in a very accepting manner. But in terms of breakdown of the money, I wasn't able to get the state plan. And if you look closely, I know it's a little hard to see some of the numbers. Disabled Veterans Outreach Program Specialists, a big part of what we do is in the field. I mean, we're going under bridges, we're going to homeless shelters, we're going wherever the homeless veteran or disabled veteran or sometimes the prisons veterans may be. So we need tools to be able to provide service. $0 was spent on equipment over that 4-year period. If you look at that line item there on number 4. Another line item I'd like you to look at is on the bottom under section D, where it talks about these incentive awards. $68,136 was allocated for incentives. About a month ago, my manager approached me and said that he wanted to nominate me to be the representative to go to Washington, D.C. for our region. He said I was the best in the region, and he wanted to nominate me. But the caveat was that I would have to pay my room and board for an entire week and then get reimbursed by the state at a later date. Well, that's $7,000. And I was very frustrated about that because I knew that there was incentives money, but for them to ask me to do that, I just felt that that was inappropriate. So I declined that nomination, and just wanted to share that information as well. In terms of the formula of how it's determined how they get that money, it's based on the number of veterans that are in the state. As of 2016, there's 646,939 veterans. This chart breaks it down by military service. In terms of the wartime years, the veterans that are actually eligible to be employed, there's a total of 31 years. And I didn't separate the numbers of the 646,000 for this chart, but I just wanted to give you a snapshot view of how many veterans are in the state of Illinois and which conflicts they served in. In terms of our business services team, there's 1 deputy director and 6 business service managers. And in terms of the JVSG grant, it is provide and pay for 47, possibly as many as 49 veteran employment representatives. Now that's over $7 million that's being split up between 49 individuals. And in reviewing my dissertation, I'm sure you saw, some of my colleagues have as little as 0 on the people on their caseloads. I don't think that's the greatest use of federal dollars. Ideally, we have a diverse job seeker that arrives. We have passionate and qualified veteran representatives. We have a committed management team that once we all are increasing our awareness, we can be empowered to actually do more, and we can get higher placements, and we can stop the turnover. So in summary and in closing, again, I'm torn. I don't know what to do at this point in regards to the finished product. There are some allies I have within executive leadership of the agency that I think will move this project forward, but I don't want to put anybody in harm's way. I'm just praying and I'm just waiting for God to reveal to me what he wants me to do. And I'm going to move on to my next assignment, which happens to take me back to Seattle, which is interesting because that's where the idea of workforce ministry was first planted in me by God, I feel. And so there's work to be done. And I'm just going to focus on that. And then when he gives me guidance, I'll do just that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Willie. Very good. Really appreciate seeing all that together in a comprehensive package. It's very helpful. Well,
Thank you, Willie.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, what I'd like you to do, all of us, to be thinking of, oh, come on. Am I still with you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I thought my internet was going down here because I had a message here, so let me click that off. Go away. All right, well, I've got a message on my machine I've got to take care of, but anyway, let's spend a little time thinking about topics. Like you say, Willie, you're kind of at a point right now, I'm not exactly sure what the Lord has in mind for the future. But like, as you've said, that'll become revealed somehow. Why don't you go ahead and stop sharing your screen, Willie, and then we can kind of all see each other a little better.
I'm kind of figuring it out, Dr. Payne, and I'm sorry I'm not very versed on it.
I'm thinking there's a button somewhere. It'll say stop sharing. I think it's a red button.
I can't get it back to a full screen.
All right. Let me try something from my end first of all. See if I can make anything happen here. If I share my screen, I think that'll knock your screen out for a moment. And if I stop sharing, okay, there we go. That brought us all back in. All right. Anyway, you're kind of at a crossroads, it sounds like, trying to see what the Lord is going to have for you in the next steps. But let me just ask an opening question, then others can kind of, because I wasn't totally clear. The manual that you created, is that best practices manual actually becoming used? I know you'd said there was a little bit of hesitation there, but how is that manual at this point in time actually, is it being implemented, used in some way, as you can see?
At this point, Dr. Payne, is not being used.
Okay.
Where it sits is, I have shared it with the manager of our training team. And she has also shared, and I talked about this a little bit in the dissertation, with some of the executive leadership in Springfield, which is our state capital.
Right.
They're very interested in this manual. And so I want to encourage them to make it available so that it can start to be utilized, but I'm afraid that it may put some people in harm's way.
Right.
So I'm not sure what to do at this point.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it seems like right now at least it's in the hands of some people who may have influence, and you pretty much just have to kind of wait and see at this point.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Bill, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Willie?
Yes.
First question I need to ask is, how is this manual going to ease the tension that you and I have between the Eagles and the Chicago Bears? No, that's not that's not the question.
Okay.
On the inside, he and I, when we were working on this dissertation.
All right.
You said in your presentation that when it came to the soldiers, and you and I, we talked about this extensively as you were saying in your dissertation. There was a lack of formal training among the counselors, and they sent them, I wrote it down verbatim, 3 to 4 days training. How will your manual correct the lack of formal training, and what would be the positive outcome of that manual?
I love that question. So, veterans, or we're not veterans at that point. When you're in the military, you have executive orders that come down the pipe or that come down through the chain of command. Then you have standard operating procedures that speak to the semantics of do step 1 first, step 2, step 3, the very detailed semantics of how to execute success. So we're trained to follow orders. That's what we know. A prerequisite to becoming a veteran employment representative for the state of Illinois is that you have to be a disabled veteran yourself. The theory that the Department of Labor has and provided us, and they stated very articulately in their policy letters, is that they want us to demonstrate the skills that we use to become employed to other veteran job seekers. And we'll utilize the familiarity of our veteran or military experience as well to open up the floodgates, if you will, or be an on-ramp to helping them to understand the importance of transitioning that kind of rough, abrasive mentality to more of a customer service focus, which is more so what employers are looking for in the business world. The best practices manual, it took the stance of embracing technology, especially from an ICT perspective. And what do I mean by that? I created a lot of hyperlinks in the manual. I wanted to make access to information easy because, it's a lot of the times in my experience, it's more so our thought process of how we receive things as opposed to what the actual thing is. So if a job seeker or a veteran felt like it was easy to access the answers to how to help people get to work, it doesn't matter what the different scenarios would be, but they can just do a Control F, for example, and put in a keyword and utilize the best practices manual to click on a link to go where the answer is. It would expedite services. It would improve the timeline to gainful or to employment for the veteran job seeker. So the best practice manual was also going to capture what veterans are using all throughout the state to be successful. So it wouldn't be a mystery about what I'm doing or what others are doing throughout the state. And it wouldn't be something that is only shared on a conference call. It would be something that is on our intranet. So it's not something that the public can access, but it's something that we all will be able to access in real time. So I think that's what would make the manual different. Does that answer your question, Dr. Weathers?
Yeah. And if I could just offer, moving forward after you graduate and everything, when you at the crossroad, not knowing what to do with the manual because of the resistance, it would probably be good to develop if you can, develop a relationship with your congressman in your area. And once you develop that relationship with your congressman would, if they endorse your manual, would be the best vehicle to create the change through your congressman, because they have the political juice to override the bureaucracies to ensure that the system gets implemented.
Great idea.
All right.
And I have a working relationship with public officials in our area. So that would be a very viable solution. So thank you for that.
No problem.
Okay. Am I allowed to ask Willie a question now?
Absolutely.
Hi, Willie.
Hi.
First of all, I know you've put in a lot of work into getting this project as far as it is. and having full awareness that, you know, you were bringing some experience from being a veteran into that work environment. So I think it's a good thing that you've done in terms of transformation leadership. My question really is, I'll make it just one question at this point, but I do have another question. In terms of the counselors, I think you engaged 3 counselors. In terms of that, do you think that the information that you got from them covers the range of ideas necessary to be included in your manual?
The short answer, Dr. Rowland, let me answer it a different way. I apologize. The counselors were chosen from a geographical perspective based on the effectiveness of how they did their jobs. So each counselor, all 27, actually all 49 of the veteran employment representatives and the 7 managers, we can all see what each other is doing all throughout the state in terms of our effectiveness. So, for example, if someone got a job, the skills that we use to help them get that job, if we wanted to, we can go and look at that step by step. But the challenge is you don't know when someone actually achieved that unless you're given insight. So what I did is I looked at the best numerical counselors by area. So in the north area, who had the best numbers, in the central area, who had the best numbers, in the southern area, so on and so forth. And those were the 3 counselors that I interviewed in addition to myself, because I represented the north. So it was all based on statistical data that was in our database in terms of the effectiveness of the individuals. Now to answer to answer what I think you're really asking me, Dr. Rowland, do I think I captured the essence of what some of the comments are all throughout the state? No. I think that there is a lot of other relevant data out there in regards to what people are struggling with and what they're having success with that I was not able to capture because the counselors were not able or willing to share with me. So I think there's an opportunity there. Is that what you're asking?
I did ask you that, and I think you've answered it really well, because what you've done is provided yourself with another opportunity to enhance your project.
Yes,
by
ma'am.
looking at how you can go forward with that. Now you've got another opportunity to ask different people. I think Dr. Beathers mentioned your congressman or whoever it is in your state. Sorry, I'm not familiar with how the rules operate in the state, but surely it's leaving yourself now with an opportunity to move forward out of that nation to something else.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And as public servants, I'd like to add this final piece, Dr. Rowland. We have an obligation to do that. That has to be done if and when this project moves forward, because people come into our office in a very unsystematic way. So, for example, we don't know what's going to happen at any given moment in terms of who may come through our doors. What we do know is that we provide a level of service, or we're intended to provide a level of service to address their needs holistically from a work readiness perspective. If we aren't being trained and or learning tools that will allow us to be transient in our work processes, we lose our effectiveness. I hope that I'm saying that correctly. And that's the challenge. We have a very static system, and the training is very infrequent. And the persons that we're seeking to serve, they're constantly evolving, and we're not keeping up. So it in turn makes the level of service from a quality perspective very poor. And there's no reason that it should be that way. I mean, the money is there. You have committed individuals, it's just the lack of structure, in my opinion.
Okay, well, may I ask another question just to advance, because I'm really looking at opportunities to get you to do additional things within your project.
Okay.
what is the possibility of meeting with the people who you're trying to serve, who are the veterans? Yeah. What about
Yes.
forums? Have you considered looking at forums with them so that you can get better ideas of, I know that wasn't included in the dissertation, but just thinking around that, you know, you're looking at the management side. What about bottom up, looking at the people you're serving and how you can better serve them by speaking to them and see how much more you can do? Still transformation.
Absolutely, and I love that. And that's an area I didn't actually cover in my dissertation, but I did actually cover. Each month, I have a monthly meeting with the veterans on my caseload. And it's an opportunity for us to network amongst each other about what's working and what's not, for me to do surveys, to do a training on a common theme I may see. And it was very structured and very successful. I based success on the number of persons that actually went back to work and didn't return. And so I was able to measure that in our system. And I started this process in January of 2017. And as of last Friday, 142 people have successfully come through my program in particular that have successfully gone back to work. The salary ranges are anywhere from $30,000 on the low end to $142,000 on the high, and everything in between. Now, these aren't huge numbers, but I wanted to be able to demonstrate that when we are intentional in our processes, we can make a difference. What is happening is change within state government, in particular in Illinois. Oh my God, it's very difficult. But by staying static, we're missing the opportunity. I don't know how else to say it. We're missing opportunities. Did I answer your question, Dr. Rowland?
Go ahead.
It does. Thank you so much, Willie. That's been helpful. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me just ask a follow-up question in that regard, Willie. I think you've mentioned, as you started the process, there was excitement, and then people started dropping off. You start getting resistance. Can you define that resistance? What was behind that resistance? And and as you keep learning new things about communication skills, are you kind of gleaning some ways that you would maybe possibly approach that whole issue of how you deal with resistance and where you can go forward with the project, even say with the leadership and the people within the offices?
I love that question, Dr. Payne. So I'll summarize what happened and where I failed and where I see an opportunity to do it differently. In the beginning, they were excited about me writing about the Veterans Program, especially when they saw the level of intellect and they learned about Baki, and I shared with them some of the ideas and directions that we can go based on if they wanted that to happen. They were all over it. After I presented a couple of chapters to them, and my colleagues in the local office started to realize, and I have to say this in layman's terms because I don't know how else to say it at this point. It was about to expose the lack of work that was happening. And they targeted me. And when they targeted me, leadership had to respond to keep things flowing. And so they in turn challenged me on some things. And in hindsight, I could have communicated differently as opposed to proving them wrong. Speaking transparently, my manager literally tried to shut it down multiple times. He was my biggest advocate in the beginning in terms of, put me in front of the people that can help take the project further. In the end, I had to share concerns about some of his semantics with the Department of Labor. And we had a conference call about that. And it was proven that he was wrong. but that process in hindsight, I could have done differently. I would have had more transparent one-on-one conversations with my leadership and sought ways to impact change, but more so with their agreement, as opposed to knowing that I was right and using the law to expose them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm hesitant now, Dr. Payne. I want my motives to be in the right place,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm confident that if this dissertation gets in the right hands, which I believe I know who to get it in the right hands of, it's going to impact some major changes. But what's my motive? Well, why do I want to do it that way? It's going to do more harm than good, and that's not of God. That's not the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to think it through. I got to wait for God to give me a better way.
I know. I mean, when you think through that whole issue, I mean, it's all about trust. You know, people, you got to form trust relationships. It's only within the context of a trust relationship that change can happen, right?
Yes, sir.
Like you say, if you kind of go at it from a legal kind of point of view, you can sometimes make changes, but you make a lot of enemies along the way.
Yes, sir.
I know when I was in pastoral work, and even other organizational works, and say I knew I was going to go into a board meeting that was going to be pretty heated, but I would probably spend a few weeks going to lunch with just individuals, trying to work on my trust relationship with each of those individuals before I was going to then meet them in a face-to-face hot situation in a board meeting. But that whole issue of establishing trust, to me, that's just such a major principle as we're trying to bring about change. Yeah. So for what it's worth, I just put that out there.
It's worth a lot, and I fully appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing that, and I will implement it, because it did create enemies, and that's not the way. That's not to, even in my experience in management, even if you force your subordinates to do whatever it is you want them to do, as soon as they get the opportunity to stick it to you, they are.
Right.
And so, forced leadership is not leadership, and it's definitely not of God. So
Yeah.
I value what you shared. Thank you, Dr. Payne.
Okay, others. Let me just ask another question then, since nobody's jumping in. I always like to know what students have learned about a research process. A dissertation can just sort of be a busy work kind of thing, or we can actually learn some principles of how you go about gaining understanding of a situation. I've already talked about gaining people's confidence and trust. Just as you've come through this process of kind of doing a research project that was then going to result in a best practices manual, try to just brainstorm a little bit. What have you learned about being a researcher, okay, in the midst of what you've been going through?
I've learned, again, in transparency, in order to be an effective communicator that's approachable on the front lines, and the communication styles, the culture, the lingo that we use in the military, and then trying to transition that to a scientific graduate level APA format is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And that's the piece I wrestled with. I picked up some bad habits. I don't know if I ever had really good habits in terms of my writing in the first place, but there's area for growth. I can find the answers. Right. I can build the relationships. Those things come natural to me. Finding resources and building the relationships. But articulating on paper in a graduate level manner that's acceptable is a challenge, and it's something I take head on. I'm not running away from it. I understand there's room for growth. what it does, if I don't overcome this, is it challenges credibility.
Yeah.
And I'm missing opportunity. And so I understand the significance of overcoming this obstacle, and I'm going to put in the work to do that. So that's what I've learned.
That's very good. Yeah, I mean, that's an important principle. I mean, same thing. I mean, as I started getting into the research area, there was times I would say, why on earth do we have to go through all this kind of structure, and we have to meet this standard and this APA standard, et cetera? But it's something you just said. We have to communicate our ideas within a framework that is acceptable within the audience that we're trying to reach, right? If I'm trying to work, in a business community, I have to know how to put my thoughts into that in a format that's going to be acceptable. If I'm working in an academic community, then I've got to be able to, put my thoughts into that format. So I always got to know my audience. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So APA, I say, okay, APA, I need to know APA so that I can put down my thoughts in a way that seems acceptable to some certain disciplines. Sometimes in some business sectors, academic sectors, a lot of sectors use APA. So yeah, I think you're kind of hitting on a good topic there. Learning to put ideas in the context of the audience. There's a proverb that I've pondered a lot of times and kind of spoke about it in teachings. I think it's Proverbs 15:1 and 2. In the New American Standard Bible, it says, wisdom makes knowledge acceptable. I've always thought, Lord, that's so good. We can have all the knowledge, but we must have the wisdom to know how to put that knowledge forward, within whatever context the Lord is asking us to do that.
Wow, that is very powerful. And we have to know your audience. You're absolutely correct. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, before my internet kind of disconnected, I wanted to share with Willie an observation. When you spoke about the resistance that you received, first it was embraced, and then you encountered resistance. I wanted to share with you or raise a question to you in regards to the resistance. What did the resistance teach you about transformational leadership and the process of transformation?
Wow. What did the resistance teach me about transformational leadership? Is that I had an opportunity to empower my colleagues, because that's where the resistance was coming from. The changes that I was proposing was going to change their day-to-day work practices. And because of the lack of structured training that I spoke of, they didn't have the tools to do the things that I was proposing. And so exposing that would have put them in harm's way from a job security perspective, at least the theory of it anyway. But had I pulled them aside and taken them out to lunch and built some trust, as Dr. Payne talked about, I think I could have gained some allies and helped them to embrace the changes, knowing that I could be a source to help them become subject matter experts on those things before they became public. Or if they ran into an issue, that they can come to me as a colleague and know that I would be there. So from a transformational perspective, I dropped the ball. I can see that now.
Can I offer insight also? That's a possibility. What I would share with you also is that the theory of transformation is great, but the practicality of it at times is embraced and is met with resistance. And so what I've learned from your dissertation and even in your presentation is that there are environments that do not want to be transformed, even if you build relationships. The challenges that Jesus faced with the Pharisees was because they operated from a legalistic theological perspective. And Jesus' concept of salvation went totally against the legalistic theological perspective, and they refused to be transformed. And so moving forward with your DTL, please understand that when it comes to transformation, try not to get discouraged, because environments that you will be placed in, whether it's corporate or church settings, there is an atmosphere where there will be those who would want to be transformed, as long as transformation doesn't disrupt the status quo. The minute transformation disrupts the status quo, then it's met with resistance. But I would encourage and challenge you to continue through the process of your transformative systems, even when you meet resistance.
Will we, and I love that, Dr. Weathers, will we, or how do I, or should I take ownership of those that are being resistant to the transformative change and the fact that they will remain in unhealthy systems? I mean, do I take ownership of that?
I think one of the positives that I've heard through this is transformative, I don't like to say agents, but those who are led and guided to provide transformative leadership must, one, evaluate themselves to see, are they willing to be transformed with the concept of transformation that they are attempting to implement and illustrate. So you said to us as a committee that there were things that you could do differently. That shows me transformation. So should you take ownership of it due to the fact that you've identified that maybe you could have done some things differently? I would say, because you've identified that, I would say yes, but also understand that even if you would have done things differently, the outcome may not have been, the outcome may have been different, or the outcome may have been the same. It doesn't say that you shouldn't take ownership. Just understand that the outcome still may have been the same, or it could have been different.
Okay. I got it.
Yeah, I mean, part of the cost of being transformational leaderships in whatever context the Lord puts us is there's always the risk of being crucified. I mean, that's our ultimate leader, of course, Jesus. That he did it all right. He still got crucified, but so yeah. But I mean, it's like the Lord has to give us that discernment. There's a point in time when Jesus told them, kind of, shake the dust off your feet and head out of town. But only the Lord can give us that time. And the Lord would give you that peace. Is this a context that the Lord is really asking you to stay in and work? Now, usually you're going to be heading to Seattle, it sounds like, which, where I've lived for 20 years. The Lord may, have another context that he wants you to keep working out the transformational aspects that he's given you, and only you're going to be able to discern that from the Lord and to the people that are around you. Yeah. But, also then finding those people, I mean, another principle that we talk about in transformational leadership is kind of going into a place and finding that person of peace. The idea that we could look at some scriptures, but, as the Lord gives you a sense of some people that are kind of the people of peace, the people who are actually open to transformation, open to what the Lord has, those are people that become, you start to connect with. And if transformation is going to happen, it's going to take place out of that kind of collaboration, that kind of place of peace with a few people, brothers and sisters, that are going to possibly be of the same mind. So I guess you're going to always be looking for those people, whether they're DLVP people or manager people. You can always be looking for those people that the Lord is kind of connecting you with, right? And so, yeah, but just so many principles there as we kind of, we think through it abstractly, in terms of transformation. But, when you're there on the front line, you're always trying to reflect. I mean, that's what, I guess what we try to take at VGU. Yeah, you're going to be in the midst of confusion, conflict, but always be trying to reflect. Okay, now what is the Lord doing here? What are the transformational principles that He's given me? So it's just kind of this constant walk in the conflict, but then kind of coming back to that place of peace in yourself, and then with whoever those people are that the Lord is going to surround you with. So yeah.
Wow. I'd just like to say to Willie, it's so important to get that peace, which Dr. Payne is referring to, because if you don't, you'll beat yourself up unnecessarily. Because resistance, people will not always accept change. That's one of the basic nature of people. It's difficult to accept change. My thought, where your military work has been, I want to compare that with what you've actually done in this project. How have you grown? How have you developed in your thinking from coming out of the military and having gone through this process? What is the new Willie like?
I love that question, Dr. Rowland. In the military, I was able to take a directive and excel at it in record speeds, and really be anal in that structural mode. I was a true soldier. In this project and in my transformational leadership studies and evolution, I like to believe, I've learned to take that same level of tenacity and put it in a customer service mode. I don't take no for an answer. I find a way to identify what I have in common with others. And that's the piece where I think I'm gonna wrestle with as I listen to you, and I think it's true. I have to be at peace with knowing I'm not going to please everyone, because it's hard for me to accept that I can't connect to someone. I just feel that there's where there's a will, there's a way. But I have to, in listening to you, I have to accept that some people may never come around and I may never be able to connect with them. But I can seek out those that I can. So how this process has grown me or evolved me is to help me to be more open-minded, to knowing when to let go. I think that's what it's done.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Bill, my final comment in regards to Willie's dissertation is, for me, what really got me about his dissertation is how he was able to, in the beginning, give a vivid illustration of the structured cultural environment that those who serve in the military have become accustomed and trained, and then leaving that structured environment, going into a place to get service that's not structured.
Yeah.
And the turmoil that soldier encounters, leaving a very structured and disciplined environment, coming into a unstructured and undisciplined environment with everything that they've encountered. And so, and how he mapped that out in the beginning gave me, because I don't know anything about the military, I haven't served in the military, And so just to hear the structured and the unstructured, and then to hear the challenges that they face, I thought that was the roadmap for the manual to show the need. And I thought that was very strong and very positive. And so, Willie, great job in identifying the two environments. I guess what was Charles Dickens' The Tale of Two Cities, although different scenarios and everything, really the tale of two military environments. One when you are enlisted, and then one when you are no longer enlisted, but you still are seeking services that is to be rendered to you.
And, you know, Dr. Weathers, I appreciate the way you shared, and I thank you tremendously for the work we've done. You pointed that out to me, or you helped me come to that evolution of the discipline we were receiving and the processes of which we had success in the military, and how coming into an unstructured environment was how frustrating that was for us. Here's the piece that I didn't touch on much in my dissertation, but it's a very real point, and it ties to the suicide rates. When, oh my God. When my brothers and sisters come back home and they're told that they have an honorable discharge, and if they need something in terms of their benefits, to go to the American Job Centers and seek out the veteran employment representatives. And then when they do that, I mean, nobody wakes up and says, I can't wait to go and ask for help. So they have to reach a level of pain, a level of humility to be able to come in and ask for help. Only to do so to get launched into the chaos that is oftentimes happening with these public servants. So they in turn away from the job center and go back into the fire, if you will, and a lot of them don't make it back. These are our nation's heroes. These are the people that put their life on the line every day for us. That's not right. It's not right.
Yeah. And like you say, to get people in leadership and management in the offices to be able to see that need to produce not more chaos, right, for a vet, but to create more of a structure, as much of a structure as can be created, and which you're trying to do, like through your best practices manual and just some of those concepts. So I mean that makes so much sense. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's good.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, we need to move into this little evaluation session I talked about. Any other pressing questions before we do that? All right, let me do this. I'm going to go ahead and pull a few of you out of the session for about 10 minutes, and then I'll bring you back in. So your screen will say something like you are on hold. So just make sure you stay with us if you can. So I'm going to put people on hold now. Let's see, I'm looking for your hold button, Willie. There you are. All right, we could get everybody set here. All right, should be 3 of us in the session. I'm going to share my screen. I'll put this little form on the screen so we can all see that. We'll just kind of work through this thing together. Let me just kind of ask you at this point. You both have kind of, worked through this dissertation. Okay. Let me just find the right button here. Stop sharing. Manage participants. We'll bring Willie back in. And we will see Felicia still there. Okay. All right. Everybody should be back with us. Sorry it took longer than we expected, but you get pastors and academics and people who care together, and it always takes longer. So, you know, what can you do? Well, Willie, we're going to be able to address you as Dr. Willie Gregory.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you've done some good work, Willie.
Thank you.
We all agreed that, man, you just been working diligently in some difficult situations, even in the midst of resistance and all that we have to encounter as those of us who are trying to do transformational work in various places. But you know, you're sticking to it, and that's what counts. We really appreciate it. All right.
Thank you.
We're going to have a few. We always have a few recommendations. You know, I think we just said to add a paragraph, and Dr. Weathers can kind of go over this. You can maybe just add a paragraph, like in that last chapter, on the implications of the results of something. If you kind of use your 3 research questions and say, based on this project, how well do I think these questions were answered to your satisfaction? Okay. So, and Dr. Weather will kind of go over that with you. Mm-hmm. There was a couple other things there, just minor issues, you know, that we just think will improve the dissertation. It's usually just, you know, adding a couple sentences here or that sort of thing. Nothing major, but so again, I want to just really, you know, focus on the congratulations that you've made it through a difficult process, Willie. And thanks.
Congratulations, Willie.
Thank you, Dr.
Oh,
Rowland.
sorry. Congratulations, Dr. Gregory.
That's right, Dr. Gregory.
Dr. Gregory, yes.
Dr. Gregory.
Dr. Rowland, Dr. Payne, I am grateful, very grateful, and I aspire to bring others to him. I mean, I hope you know that.
Amen.
So thank you.
Now, Dr. Gregory, you know I was against it. I can't support the Chicago Bears. I just can't. I just can't do it. I just
Seattle Seahawks now.
Yeah. Even that, you know, that's a different bird. That's just a different bird. But Willie, what's a good time? Are you available? What's a good time tomorrow that we can do either Zoom or call by cell phone? My Bible study is over at about 1:30 EST. So would 2 o'clock my time, 1 o'clock your time be good?
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'll just give you a call. So 2 p.m. my time, 1 p.m. your time,
okay.
1 p.m. CST. We'll just go over just minor adjustments to your dissertation.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay. We could probably hear a few words from your parents, if either of you would like to say anything.
I just thank you guys. Can't talk right now.
I'm so grateful for you all's support. My husband really have worked very diligently, and he's dealt with so much. I'm not sure that I could fully express it. Thank you all so much. This means so much, and there's so much work to be done, and I'm going to support him in any way that I can. And I've learned so much from all that he's gone through, and the guidance you all has given him that he shared with me just helps me to grow in my studies.
Right.
So it's awesome watching his transformation, and being able to apply at a deeper level, at a spiritual level, all that he's experienced. I've witnessed most of it. So just thank you, especially Dr. Weathers and Dr. Payne. There's been so much feedback you've given that he's been able to incorporate through the process of transformation. So just thank you. Thank you so much. And
All right.
yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Felicia, just for standing by Willie through a difficult time, a difficult process. I know how a dissertation, I even know how I know a doctoral program, how it can really disrupt the family. Because, there's just so many hours and hours of work and reading that have to be done. But thanks for your diligence, sort of just hanging in there with Willie and getting it done.
Yes, well, it's been my pleasure and definitely worth it, right?
Yes.
Wow.
All right.
Definitely worth it.
All right.
All right, you all. Take care and thank you.
God bless. God bless.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Well, we need to close this session down. We've kind of hit our 2 hours. And Wayne, Dr. Weathers, would you lead us in prayer just for Willie?
Sure.
Thanks.
Most heavenly and gracious Father, we're honored to just be in your presence today. We want to thank you for allowing us to pour our knowledge and invest in Willie Gregory, Dr. Willie Gregory. And we want to thank you for Dr. Willie Gregory investing in us. We thank you for the journey. We thank you for the trials. We thank you for the tribulations.
Yes.
Now, Heavenly and Gracious Father, we thank you for fruitful faithfulness now brings about a fruitful reward. We thank you for all that have been involved. And as Willie obtains his doctorate of transitional leadership degree, allow him to be able now to walk in what it is that you allowed him to accomplish. And so, Lord, we thank you for Dr. Rollins. We thank you for Dr. Payne. We thank you for a support system that's in place. But most of all, we just thank you for just being you. And so, Lord, we give you all the glory and honor. Bless him, bless his family, bless the BGU staff. And then with this, we give you all the glory and honor. In Jesus Christ, we pray. Let us say
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right. Well, blessings on you all, and keep up the good work, Dr. Gregory.
Thank you, Dr. Payne.
Amen.
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Weathers.
Congratulations.
Right.
Yes.
Dr. Rowland, thank you very
You're
much.
so welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, goodbye, everyone.
Take care.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.